Hello and welcome, everyone. We're here with Bow Live and welcome John Iowanu, the owner of Florida Closing and Escrow. And he's here live all the way from Greece. Welcome.
Yasu, as the Greeks say. Hi, Cindy. Good to see you. Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. Even on vacation, he is working. That's how dedicated Florida Closing and Escrow is. And we're the only title company in Sunny Isles, mobile, multilingual, assist you with closings, title from contract to closing, very dedicated team to assist you in your success. And I can assist you as well as the marketing liaison, also with novel marketing tools, AI, targeted digital marketing, Bow Live for your live stream opens, and more. 786-457-6832. And without further ado, John is going to give some NAR updates to assist you with the new ruling that went into effect August 17th.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. So it looks like I was doing a presentation yesterday. It appears that it has already taken effect on the MLS, where offers of compensation have been removed from the field. So looks like they're a couple days early. That's okay. So what that means is now that the offers of compensation are not on the MLS, the only way for a buyer's agent to know what the compensation is for them is to contact the listing agent and find out from them either by email, text, or phone call what the seller or the broker is sharing for their offer of compensation to the buyer. So how does that look as an overview of what happened? So basically, there's one new form as a result of the settlement, and that's this compensation agreement. And there's two forms: broker to broker or seller to buyer's broker. Most likely, you're going to be using the broker to broker form, which basically means just like they're doing now, where a listing agent will sign a listing agreement. Hopefully, it's 6% or 5%, and in that agreement, it's going to say what the offer of compensation sharing is to the buyer's agent. So, the listing agent will tell you over the phone or by email, you as a buyer's agent. So what you have to do is use this new form, this compensation agreement form, that you would email to the listing agent stating what they told you over the phone. If it's 3% offer of compensation, 2.5, 2, 1, whatever it is, you have to use this form. If you do not use this new form, you will not get paid at time of closing. So that's the new form. The other two forms were forms already in existence. They just revised them slightly. The one form is the listing agreement. Everyone's very aware of this form, and I'm sure you use it all the time. This is the listing agreement. Basically, they added one paragraph to that form, and they made some minor revisions, but they added paragraph 9 to that form. Now, there's another agreement where that's my father on the phone. So, the other form is the buyer broker agreement. This is a form that's already in existence as well. They just add some revisions to that, and they made it mandatory. Before, you didn't have to have a buyer broker agreement signed. Now it's mandatory. So you do have to have the buyer broker agreement signed between the buyer and the buyer's agent. So that's basically it. As an overall review of what happened with the settlement, there's one new form that needs to be used. That's the compensation agreement. And there's two listing agreements and buyer broker agreements that are in existence already, but were just revised. Basically, everything is on MLS, and you should start using them. It looks like even today is what we should be doing with those forms.
And they can
And
find the
that's it.
forms on Form Simplicity.
They're on Form Simplicity now. And with regard to the listing agreement, one of the questions I've been asked is, do we have to sign a new listing agreement? How does it work? Because there's a couple of different versions of the listing agreement out there. So how does that work? If you are using a listing agreement that's dated July 2024, and you can find that date on the bottom of the form. It'll say revised, REV 7/2024. If you're using that form, that is the most up-to-date and recent form. You do not have to do anything as of August 17th. You can use that form and don't need to do any changes to it. If you're using a form dated March of 2024, you will need to provide a disclosure document. It's going to be a one-pager. They haven't released it yet. We're expecting it any day now. It's probably going to be a paragraph uh, long, where it's going to say basically that compensation is negotiable and it's not required by law. All you have to do is provide that disclosure to the seller. The seller does not need to sign it. You just have to provide that disclosure. And if you're using a form before March of 2024, you will need to sign a new listing agreement form that is dated July of 2024. So that's the setup with the listing agreements. If you're using July 2024 and after, you're good to go. You don't have to do anything. If you're using between March and July, you have to provide a disclosure form. If you're using a form before March, you have to use the new form.
Okay, I've had some questions. If the compensation is going to be offered as a concession, how does that work and where is that on the forms?
So concessions are very interesting. They are allowed. We have to be careful with those because concessions are from sellers to buyers. So that's going to be in an addendum to the contract. It's not in any of these forms that I've discussed. That's more of an agreement between seller and buyer, and then buyer will provide payment to you as a buyer's agent. So that's how a concession would work. That's actually an addendum to the contract.
Okay, and then I have another question. The buyer comes to the listing without representation. How can compensation be worked out?
Okay, so that's another very popular question we're getting a lot of. And the answer is it's basically the same. Right now, and before all of this, if you're at a listing, you're a listing agent, you had an open house, and a buyer came to you, same setup. You can represent the buyer. However, now, if you want to represent the buyer officially, you will have to sign a buyer broker agreement. But the other question was, well, what if a buyer comes to me at an open house? Do I have to have them sign this agreement before I show them the house? The answer is no, because technically you're still working for the seller. You're showing the house on behalf of the seller. So you can show a house without having a buyer broker agreement signed. You don't even need a buyer broker agreement if you don't want one. If this buyer comes to you and says, I'm unrepresented, that's fine. You can put in the contract that just you will be representing the listing agent, the seller. The question is, do you get 6%? Nothing has changed with that. We refer back to the listing agreement, and in the listing agreement, paragraph 8, it says what the offer of compensation is from the seller to the listing agent. Normally that's 6%. The following paragraph was the sharing part. If you're not doing any sharing, you still get to keep the 6%. Now, sometimes I know listing agents will put in there in the additional terms part, okay, if I bring the buyer or if I find the buyer, instead of 6%, it's 5%. All of that is still the same. Nothing is changing there. The only change is if you want to officially represent the buyer, you have to sign a buyer broker agreement.
And can the co-listing agent represent the buyer?
Yes, same rules still apply. The listing agent can represent the buyer and co-agents can represent whoever. So none of those rules have changed. Everything is still business as usual with that. The only caveat is if you are going to represent a buyer, you have to get the buyer broker agreement signed between you and the buyer.
Okay, any recommendations for how to present this? I know we've discussed, presenting this in a positive light and telling the buyer that if you don't sign with me, you're going to have to sign with somebody. So it might as well be with me and sell yourself on your value. And I do have 90 reasons why a buyer should work with a selling agent and a buyer agent. And if you'd like to get a copy of that, please contact me. I also have 15 reasons why a seller agent should work with a buyer agent. And in addition, I think you should also say that you have a team that adds to your value. I know John will do contract draft, review, addendums, hold escrow, answer any questions. So that's also added value that you bring to your buyer that you can also say is included. Anything else that you want to add, John?
Yeah, look, every realtor is different, right? So you're going to have to find out what your strengths are, what you're good at, and how to present that to a potential consumer or customer. If it's a location that you're really good at, push that. If you're farming an area or if you're an expert in this particular area, push that. And then you don't have to practice, you're going to have to sell yourself. So see what works, see what doesn't work. But you can do it. It just takes a little bit more planning and whatnot. But I have faith in the realtors that we know and the realtors that we work with that you'll be able to get through this.
Yeah, a lot are just saying business as usual and just be positive about this. And the best time to have them sign is before the showing, correct?
Right. So it's not it, to sign a buyer broker agreement, right? It's needed before the showing. That's correct. So once you start doing work and taking a buyer to any virtual or in person showing, you must have the buyer broker agreement signed. And we have to be very careful. Some people might say, well, I don't think I'm really going to follow this. Who's really going to check? Apparently,
I'm checking.
it's, there's an enforcement going on already. I've already been told where someone was improperly referencing buyer broker commissions on the MLS, and they've been fined $500 already. Um, the good news for that is it looks like the local MLS is taking these new rules very seriously, which is good for all realtors because you don't want some following the rules and some not. So enforcement is happening, and I've been told that the first violation is $500 fine, and then the second violation is a suspension. They go right from monetary fine to suspension. So be very careful what you're listing on the MLS. Be very careful about not getting buyer broker agreements signed because there are enforcement things in place, and you don't want to be in violation of any of those.
And you're saying that it can't go on the MLS, but it can go on your website and anywhere else?
Yeah, it can go on your website, and you can put your website in the broker's remarks. The only thing is, you cannot mention anything about buyer compensation anywhere in your listing. And also, they're saying don't try and be cute either about maybe putting buyer broker friendly or anything like that, because they're going to view that as a violation, and then you're going to get a $500 fine. So nothing cute. Everyone knows what the new rules are. So basically, what's going to be happening if you're a listing agent is you're going to be getting a call or an email from a buyer's agent saying, "Hey, I represent a buyer. We're interested in the following property. Is it available?" Your listing agent's going to say yes, and then you might ask, the next question is, what are the showing instructions? And you'll say what those are. And the next question is going to be, what's the offer of compensation? So you're going to say whatever that is, and then most likely the buyer's agent's going to say, okay, I'm going to be sending over the compensation agreement, sign it and send it back. And that compensation agreement can be signed electronically. And remember, the compensation agreement is just signed between the brokers, not the buyer or not the seller, just the two brokers. And if your broker has authorized you to sign that document on their behalf, the agents can actually sign this compensation agreement.
And it's per property, John, if you're showing more than one property a day?
Yes, so that's where it's going to be a little bit more work, but yes, it is per property, the compensation agreement. Now, the buyer broker agreement does not have to be property specific. You can put location. On the first page, there's a location part where you can put Miami-Dade or Broward. You can put the county or the city or the zip code. So you don't need multiple buyer broker agreements. You just need one, but you will need multiple compensation agreements.
Okay, very good. So if anyone has any questions, we're very happy to assist you. And we're happy to assist you also, of course, with your title and closing needs and novel marketing tools. So contact us and to much success ahead. And were there any other questions, Frederica, behind the scenes? Any other questions
Yes.
came up?
Hi, I received two questions. Can the BBA, the buyer's broker agreement, provide a percentage range for commission? Or it
Very
has
good
to be
question.
like a
The
specific amount?
answer is 100% no. So,
Oh,
getting into the buyer broker agreement a little bit, you have to put a percentage. You cannot put 1-3%, nor can you put whatever compensation the seller is offering. Both of those are no-nos. You cannot do it. You have to put 3% on there. And here's the thing, if you don't put 3% on the BBA, and let's say the buyer says, well, worst case scenario, if they're not offering it, the most I'm going to pay you is 1%. I don't want to agree to 3%. Here's the issue. If you put 1% on the buyer broker agreement and the seller is offering 3% offer of compensation, you are only entitled to 1%, whatever the amount is on the BBA. So, how it's going to work out is you're going to have to say, hey, look, I have to put 3% because if the seller offers 3%, then I can get 3%. If they offer less than 3%, you're going to have to say, we can revise this agreement and we can make a new one that matches the percentage that the seller is offering. But be very careful. If you put one, seller's offering 3, you're not getting 3, you're only getting 1. So it's a very good question.
okay. Next question.
Yeah, I have other question that says, can the BBA, buyer's broker agreement, be revised, updated to reflect a new higher percentage?
Yes. Another good question. The answer is yes, it can. You can have as many buyer broker agreements signed and re signed and redone as you like. There is a sentence on that agreement that says any new agreements that are signed will uh, take control over the previous one. So the only question with that is okay, so the buyer says, hey, look, let's put 1%. And if we get 3% offer of compensation, we can change this agreement. The problem is you have to trust them that they will honor their decision to allow you to sign a new BBA. So the other way is you can say, hey, trust me, I'll revise it to make sure it's lower, versus them saying, hey, trust me.
John, we lost you. Okay, we had a little. There we go.
Okay.
You're back. Okay, we lost you
Yeah.
for a minute.
So it can be done. You have to kind of trust them that they will agree to make that change, because if they don't, like I just mentioned, if they say, well, forget it, never mind, we're staying with the 1%, I was able to work a deal with the seller to lower the price, you're only getting 1%. Answer is yes, but I prefer, if I were you as a realtor, to do it the other way, where you say, hey, let's put 3%, and then we can change it lower if the offer of compensation is lower.
Okay. Any other questions? If anyone does have any questions, you could contact John, ji@floridaclosing.com, or if you want to give your cell while you're away. uh, if it's a
My
very, very,
cell, everyone, you should have it. It's on my tag, email, cell, whatever it is. Just know for the next week or two, we're 7 hours ahead. So as you can tell, it's kind of dark here. So it's about what, almost 10 o'clock here in Greece. There's a little bit of Athens at night. So.
oh, how beautiful. Enjoy your vacation. And if anyone needs you, if it's very important, they can reach John or contact me and I'll get through to John. And we're happy to assist you and hopefully with continued success. Thank you very much for joining today and let us know if there's any further questions or issues regarding this or any other subject. Thank you for joining.